Well, y'all, thank you very much for coming to this beautiful complex. I remember the days when ETV was over on Millwood Avenue, Chairman Cone. It's come a long way. ETV, I think, still has a reputation as being the finest educational television system in the United States. And we want to build it. We want to grow because its capacity is enormous, and it certainly fits our needs, Mr. Spearman. Today, I'm pleased to announce that the state of South Carolina will be investing $1.3 million to expand datacasting at SCETV. Datacasting is the one-way broadcasting of data or information through television signals. While datacasting has traditionally been used to support public safety, the opportunity and technology now exists to use datacasting to deliver lessons, assignments, and educational content to students with limited or no internet access. And about 20% of our state does not have good internet access. That is what this is aimed at. Datacasting is not a replacement for broadband. Instead, it is an intermediate solution until broadband can be expanded. And also, this datacasting capability that we have at ETV can be expanded in other areas as well. We are building. South Carolina's ETV broadcast signal currently covers 98% of the state. If a student can receive SCETV over the air, then datacasting is a viable option for the student to receive instructional content, that is, school lessons. We're taking the schoolhouse to the child. Currently, SCETV is piloting this initiative in 3 places: Fairfield, Jasper, and York 1 school districts. I want to recognize representatives from those districts who are with us today, and their leadership, of course, is much appreciated. They are Dr. J.R. Green, Superintendent of the Fairfield County School District. Hold up your hand, please. Thank you. Dr. Rochelle Anderson, Superintendent of the Jasper County Schools, and Tim Cooper, Public Information Officer for York School District Number 1. Excellent. Thank you for being here. Also, I want to recognize State Superintendent of Education Molly Spearman, whose department will be collaborating with SCETV to expand datacasting to approximately 5,000 students across 34 school districts that were significantly impacted by the coronavirus pandemic. This collaboration between SCETV and the Department of Education will expand educational opportunities throughout our state. And that is our goal, is to cover the whole state with educational opportunities of the highest caliber. I also want to express my appreciation to members of the General Assembly who are here today and participated in this effort. Senator Thomas Alexander, Representative Terry Alexander, Representative Annie McDaniel, and Representative Ray Felder, and Senator Margie Bright Matthews. I also want to thank the taxpayers who made this money available. Thank you. We'll try to keep them as low as we can and spend them very wisely. Back in May, the General Assembly allocated $155 million from the state contingency reserves to create the COVID-19 Response Reserve Account. That was a wise move. They authorized the governor to use these funds to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the public as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. So again, we thank all for their involvement in seeing that this money is being put to this purpose. Finally, I want to thank the leadership of SCETV, without whose vision and leadership and innovation and capacity this project would not be possible. And I say again, this is the beginning. Mr. Anthony Paget, who is the President and CEO of SCETV. Anthony. Dr. Stephanie Frazier, Vice President of Education for SCETV. And Mr. Richard Cone, Chair of the South Carolina Educational TV Commission. And the other members include David Vipperman from the 5th Congressional District. We appreciate your service, sir, for many years, in attendance here today. Let me say that the South Carolina, our entire community, we need to continue to recognize the importance of children having access to these educational services. our economic strength has been recognized over the years as being dependent on education. At the mansion, we have some books on the Burns Foundation, James Burns. And just this morning, I happened to be reading some of his statements, and he said that our economic prosperity is directly based on our educational strength. So if we're going to be prosperous, healthy, and happy, that means we must educate these children. And we're going to do everything we can to see that every child in South Carolina gets a first-class education. Now, this is part of a broad plan. This is not something thought up overnight. We like to think things out and use the taxpayer money strategically and directly where it will produce the desired result. And the legislature in Act 142 of 2020 authorized the expenditure of $50 million in federal coronavirus relief funds by the Office of Regulatory Staff, known as ORS, to do two things. $20 million for the purchase of mobile hotspots for households with an annual income of 250% or less of the federal poverty guidelines, and that have an individual attending a public or private K-12 school or public or private college, university, or technical college. To date, the Office of Regulatory Staff has purchased over 100,000 mobile hotspots and monthly services for 87,822 students in public schools, 12,456 for students in public and private colleges, universities, and 102 students in private schools. That's where some of this money is going. Also, ORS is investing $30 million in broadband infrastructure. ORS has approved 81 applications submitted by 13 broadband service providers to expand broadband infrastructure. The Office of Regulatory Staff estimates that service could be provided to 27,994 homes and 771 businesses. So you see, these plans that we're making to get through this virus are in accordance with what we are attempting to do to educate the children of South Carolina. The suffering and economic damage that's been inflicted by the virus have been dramatic. We all know about it. We see it everywhere. Families, businesses, and livelihoods have been suffered. But we are moving out of that in South Carolina. We are innovating, we are thinking, we're imagining ways to do things better with the things that we have. And we have enormous talent to do that, and you see some of that represented here today before you. Children have lost valuable learning progress due to the schools being closed. They've been isolated from their teachers and friends and daily routines. And we know that this isolation and uncertainty has impacted the mental health of our children as it has others in dislocated working families. And we are attempting to do all we can to correct that and make us stronger. This investment today will help ensure that our students who live without access to broadband will be able to keep up and access key educational content and lessons plans. So we're making progress, steady progress. We will make more. We have the whole team is on the field collaborating, communicating, and cooperating, and I can assure you that South Carolina will shine. Superintendent Spearman,
Thank you,
please.
Governor. Thank you, sir. Good morning, everyone. Back in July, we were proud to announce that South Carolina was one of 11 states chosen for a Rethink K-12 Education Models grant. The grant, which is funded by the CARES Act, is meant to support states' efforts to create new innovative ways for students to continue learning in ways that meets their needs. South Carolina's 3-year grant, titled Return to Learn, was funded at $15 million and has a goal of providing all South Carolina students with a high-quality, robust digital education through remote learning and through digital resources that can be accessed via a myriad of platforms. Our objectives are to increase availability of remote learning to students and teachers in areas that lack broadband access, improve educational resources by developing and curating engaging high-quality content, increase teacher experience, confidence, and proficiency with remote learning, and improve communication between families, teachers, and schools to support remote learning. To help us fulfill these goals and objectives, we joined with our good friends at ETV, and I remember the day that Anthony Padgett called me and said, "I got an idea. Will y'all help us?" And we were so happy to step up to the plate, and also working with the Education Oversight Committee. This partnership between ETV and the Department of Education through Datacasting will allow ETV to transmit files, videos, and other computer data to computers through the broadcast signal, an inexpensive tuner, and a little TV antenna. This will provide students and educators who do not have broadband internet access with the same instructional content and educational resources that would normally require an internet connection. This partnership, in addition to what the legislature has funded, is a little over $800,000 for 3 years, $2.4 million. And through this grant, we will be supplying the student portion of equipment that they need in their homes, while this will help provide what ETV needs to get those data files and that information out to the families. This is really a true collaboration. It's a step in the right direction. Doesn't solve all of our problems. If there's anything good that's come out of this pandemic, is that everyone in the state is working together to improve broadband capability for all citizens of South Carolina. And we are so happy at the Department of Education to be a part of this. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you. Thank you. Very good. Senator Alexander, and I know you have a committee meeting starting in two
yes,
minutes.
Yes, so I'll be brief. How about that? And thank you. It's a pleasure to be here this morning with you, Governor, and with the Superintendent, my colleagues, the Senate, and the House of Representatives, and ETV. Couldn't agree with the Governor more that ETV is the standard of educational TV across this country, and we are so grateful for all your efforts and your vision of this partnership that's being with the Datacasting and the partnership with the Superintendent of Education, Department of Education. We're doing a lot of work in the broadband. This Datacasting, though, is a part of the puzzle. It is a piece of the puzzle that's vital at this particular time to help meet the educational needs of our children. As been mentioned earlier, the General Assembly has been very supportive. I will tell you that Chairman Leatherman, before the virus, had already charged me and others with looking at the expansion of broadband throughout the state of South Carolina to unserved areas. Since this virus, that has been expedited. And Superintendent of Education, I couldn't agree with you more. I've never seen anything that has united the General Assembly like trying to get broadband to the communities, the unserved parts of South Carolina. I'm grateful for the leadership of the General Assembly. I'm grateful for Chairman Smith over on the House side and the colleagues there. I know I've worked very closely with Senator from Darlington, Senator Malloy, Senator Scott from here in Richland County, Senator Shaheen from over in Kershaw, Senator Davis from down in Beaufort, others up in the upstate. It really shows that this is something that's important for us to meet the unmet needs of not only the students, but the families and economic development. So broadband, and we can't get there fast enough, but we're working, and it will take time to get broadband in all the communities across South Carolina. But that is the reason that this Datacasting is so critical at this particular time to help be a part of that puzzle. So thank you for what you're doing, Governor and Superintendent and my colleagues, and together with all collaborating, communication together, and coordination. I believe that's the 3 C's. Cooperation and coordination. Cooperation are the things that really will bring this to a great success for South Carolina, and I look forward to that bright future that we have when we have broadband going in these unserved areas, and again teaming up with ETV as we meet these challenges with the data casting that will help us in this particular critical time. So with that, I've overstayed my time. I'm going to the Senate Finance Committee, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank y'all very much.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Chairman Richard Cohn.
Good morning. My name is Richard Cohn, and it's my privilege to serve as chairman of the ETV Commission. I'm very grateful to my friend, Governor Henry McMaster, for making this announcement today and for supporting the critical initiative. Today is about innovation, resourcefulness, and commitment. SCETV's commitment to the people of this state. We're here to serve all of South Carolina and to make a positive impact on the quality of life. We have a unique set of technology and tools at our disposal. It's our duty to use those things in any way we can to benefit the state. Most students across South Carolina started their school year in some form over the last several weeks. Unfortunately, during this time of social distancing and remote learning, there are too many students without internet access at home. We're here to change that. Datacasting will help us better serve those households that don't have an adequate broadband connection. Through datacasting, SCETV can transmit files to computers and smart devices using inexpensive tuners and TV antennas. With these two pieces of equipment, educational content can be received via SCETV's television signal. This is truly a game changer. Before closing, I again want to thank Governor McMaster for his support. I know this is one of his pet projects, and he is very high on education. We believe datacasting will be a critical resource for our education community, not just for the remainder of this pandemic, but for years to come. Thank you very much.
President and CEO Anthony Paget, SCETV.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Anthony Paget, and I'm the President and CEO of South Carolina ETV and Public Radio. I'd like to start by thanking Governor McMaster for his vision and support, and for the support of the General Assembly and our partners in this project. As we all know, there are areas of this state that still lack adequate broadband. The governor recognizes the importance of making sure that the individuals that reside in those areas still have access to educational content. To truly close South Carolina's broadband gap, it's going to take more than just one initiative. In fact, it will probably take several initiatives to meet the different needs that exist across our state. Datacasting offers an innovative solution to a unique challenge. How do we connect with students that don't have access to the internet? Utilizing our existing television infrastructure, datacasting allows for the one-way transmission of content over a broadcast signal to computers and smart devices. Although datacasting has been used in public safety for years, this is the first time it's being used specifically to support education. Of course, SCETV isn't alone in executing this initiative. We're joined by our partners in a collaborative effort between our agency, the South Carolina Department of Education, our technology partner SpectraRep, and with continued support from Governor McMaster and the General Assembly and the state of South Carolina. We are deploying a phased approach to this initiative. South Carolina schools and districts will participate over the next 12 months in pilot districts including Fairfield, Jasper, and York County School District 1. Conversations are ongoing with other partners across the state as well. It's probably an understatement to say that we're living through an extraordinary time right now. In times like these, we at South Carolina ETV believe it is our responsibility to be innovative and to attempt to provide any advantage that we can through the technology that we have available to us. That's exactly what this datacasting initiative is all about. Again, I thank you, Governor McMaster, for your support, and I look forward to developing this initiative further throughout the 2021 school year. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Ray Felder.
Thank you, Governor, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being here today. I'm Ray Felder. I chair the K-12 subcommittee with the House Education and Public Works. Today started out a little cloudy outside, but this news is a ray of sunshine for South Carolina students and the families that are trying to do the best with the virtual learning across our great state. I have a tremendous amount of thanks and gratitude to ORS and the Department of Administration. They have done yeoman's work in record time to advance contracts for broadband expansion. But our students and our families needed more, and they needed it faster. Thanks to this opportunity, that is going to happen. This contract to have ETV and Datacasting is going to give students and families what they need for a short-term possibility to continue the opportunity of learning in a virtual environment. Speaker Lucas appointed the ad hoc committee of the House Education and Public Works Committee to look at educating our most precious resource, our children, amidst the COVID-19. I chaired this committee, and along with me, Chair Lady Allison served on this committee, Representative Alexander, who is here with us today, Representative Brawley, and Representative Stringer. The day ETV came and shared with us the possibility of expanding datacasting to less technical people like me. They had to really break that down. But we got very excited. Many homes in South Carolina have access to a television and maybe an antenna or maybe cable that do not have access to broadband or internet. So we were very excited. We got excited for the families, the students that broadband is lacking. We got excited for the families and the students where the My Wi-Fi that the State Department has worked so diligently on is not a consistent source for virtual learning. We got excited because this expansion of datacasting is a giant step for rural South Carolina. ETV, I thank you. I thank you for working with our state's leadership, fulfilling a commitment that leadership has made, a commitment to provide resources and opportunities to all of South Carolina students, regardless of their zip code. I thank you, Governor McMaster and Speaker Lucas, the State Department of Education, all of my colleagues in the General Assembly, and of course ETV, because today we are putting children first. We are all in this together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ed. Okay. Wonderful. Are there any questions?
Governor, this is a one-way signal, right?
That's right.
Once students complete their assignments, how are they supposed to turn them in?
Okay.
I'm actually going to ask our Vice President of Education, Dr. Stephanie Frazier, to elaborate on that a little bit.
Good morning. I apologize. Can you repeat the question?
It's a one-way signal. So once students get the information and they complete the assignment, how are they supposed to turn in that assignment?
So we are working with our pilot districts to make sure that we have a model in place, and the models are really going to vary depending on the needs of the student. We've talked about a number of different scenarios, one being something as simple as establishing a conference call so that the teacher says, you have received this information, here's my Google voice number, or here's a line. We're going to speak at this particular time during this particular day about the items that you have received. We also have talked about taking advantage of the mobile hotspots that are in place around the state. So instead of a student having to go to the hotspot to get the information, to complete the information and then upload it, with Datacasting they will already have it, so they can go to those hotspots and upload it at that time. And then if you're looking at A/B schedules, a student may be able to have a shorter amount of time so they can get the Datacasting when they return to school to pick up information. They can share the assignments back that way. So it is one way, but certainly we are trying to get the information to them, and we will have a number of different options for them to return it.
Do we know how many students lack sufficient internet to actually complete their assignments despite the MyFi hotspot?
Thank you. Stay close. Make sure I answer this correctly. We know that we've distributed a little over 80,000 Wi-Fis already to students. And we know that those are the students who qualified for the 250% below poverty. I think I've heard about 5,000 students in the 3 districts that have already been identified as those that the Wi-Fi may not be working really well out at their home, and so they would be likely to use the Datacasting. We also know that as students have registered, there are some families who can't afford Wi-Fi or who may not have Wi-Fi who were not on that initial qualification list of 250% below poverty. So we're asking school districts right now to collect that information and to let us know. With the flexibility that the legislature, it appears that they're going to give us through the Senate Finance Committee yesterday on our CARES Act funding that we can reimburse. Looks like there's some possibilities there that we will be able, at least through December 31st, to assist in buying more if necessary.
Why those 3 districts for the pilot?
So there were a number of factors that went into establishing the districts. We looked primarily at the group of districts who have been identified as being disproportionately impacted by COVID. There's about 34 districts in that group. We also looked at the relationships that we have with districts based on other projects that we have in play, as well as recommendations from the State Department of Ed and those districts who have a large number of students without broadband access. So there's a large number to pull from, and we certainly hope that we can touch each of those areas. But the 3 that we picked were the ones that rose to the top during the assessment.
You say disproportionately impacted. What does that mean?
So there was a scale with a number of different factors that looked at the number of COVID cases. They looked at broadband access. It looked at household income. So there was a formula at play that was identified by the State Department of Education as we were working with the governor's office to do a number of different projects.
So we're starting with 3 districts. How soon are we moving across the state?
So we are right now working diligently to deploy receivers in those 3 districts, though that will start in October. We are hopeful that we will get additional receivers into households later this fall, but definitely at the top of the school year, we will begin to get closer to scalability in terms of reaching those 5,000.
And obviously, school districts have started across South Carolina. Last day was yesterday was the last day for all to be on board. Why are we so late in doing this?
Well, I will say that certainly Datacasting is a technology, and certainly my president may want to speak more to this, but we explored this technology in response to the pandemic, and it is certainly something that has been at play, but we have spent the past several months transitioning something that, was designed for public safety to support education. So it's been moving as quickly, I think, as we can. Do you want to add something?
Okay. We have been working all summer on this. It takes a while. In fact, the grant that we wrote to support the families part of this that I talked about we started working on that as soon as it was announced, late April, May. We started writing that, so it takes a while. I will say, though, that our school district folks are in very close contact with families, and many of them, there are different models happening. But for those students, if we know that the Wi-Fi is not working, they are making strides to correct that. I know particularly down in Calhoun County, for instance, they're actually bringing in some students, and we're offering our school buses to bring students to either the school or a place where Wi-Fi is available. So it's not ideal. They can't work on that all day long. But we have been working all summer together to get to the spot where we are right now. But we're not going to just leave a child stranded. We've given permission for buses to be used and for some type of response to every family if they don't have Wi-Fi in their house.
And Just to add to that a little bit, the one thing that I wanted to mention is that what we're talking about today, specifically with datacasting, didn't exist 4 months ago. This is something that's been created, as Superintendent Spearman said, over the past 4 months, and there's been a lot of hard work and a lot of diligent effort that's been placed into it. There's a technological component that has to be ordered from a manufacturer, implemented, tested, and deployed throughout the state as well. That work started very early on. As a matter of fact, as soon as we launched our at-home learning initiative last March, we started working on this project. And it's taken some time for all of it to come together, for the funding to come in. But honestly, I'd have to say, if you look at the pace at which this has been made available, it's kind of record-breaking in my mind, and that there's been a lot of hard work and a lot of effort that's been put into it.
Yes, ma'am. Over here, yes, ma'am.
So I have a question on how exactly it'll kind of work. So will the teacher need to record and then that will play, or can you kind of go into exactly what the rundown of this will look like on the student's end, and then also what the teachers will have to do to prepare their lessons and make sure that for different grade levels and all of that kind of layout?
There's several scenarios that we've outlined related to that, and I'll let Dr. Frazier speak a little bit more about that in a moment. But as part of that, too, one of the things that we really like about this system is its flexibility and how agile it is for the teachers to work with. You've often heard us refer to this throughout this meeting or this conference as a pilot project. And that was somewhat done intentional. It was done in a way so that we could work with teachers and administrators to develop a tool that was useful and relevant for them and the students in the classroom or at home. Because we didn't just want to provide a service and say, here you go, figure out how to work with it and figure out what to do with it. It's something that Dr. Frazier and her team, and working with our partners, has really designed from the ground up to be utilized by the teachers and the students in a way that's meaningful and impactful for them. Dr. Frazier, if you'd like to stand on that a little.
So the interface is designed to simulate, to the extent possible, a web experience. So what the students will see on their end looks very much like a web page. They will be able to click on something and it will say, hey, you have new content, almost like you have new mail. They can click on it to see the files that have been datacast to them. We are working with our districts in the pilot to make sure that on the teacher end, they understand the interface, and it really will just be an intuitive point and click. If they are uploading something to their learning management system, then they will be able to upload it for data casting as well.
You had one, sir?
Yeah, when do we expect this to be rolled out to other areas of the state?
We're working on a plan for that. Talking with Superintendent Spearman and her team, trying to identify the areas that are most needed. We focused on the pilot districts that we've been talking about based on the information that Dr. Frazier shared earlier, but we are looking at a scalability approach to this as well, and trying to identify the areas that are most needed and most impacted. And as Superintendent Spearman referenced earlier, we know we're going to find some areas that might be a one-off, where there's just an area that has absolutely no service or very limited service, and this is the only option they have. And so we would obviously, pull things together and make something happen in those communities as they're discovered.
Yes, ma'am.
So where will students get this equipment, and will they get the computer or tablet, or is it just the tuner and antenna that will be provided with?
There's essentially three components that are needed to make this work. One is the device which you mentioned, which is a Wi-Fi enabled device. The other is an antenna and a receiver, and there's a couple of different options we have for the deployment of those devices. Dr. Frazier, I'll let you share some of your experience with the districts that you've had so far.
So to answer your last question, there is some funding allocated to support devices for those districts where students may not be one-to-one. So there is funding set aside for that. In terms of the equipment, we are working with the pilot districts to make sure that in a way they would manage the MiFi program or the Chromebook program, that we would have some sort of coordinated pickup for students. If we need to take them, particularly during this pilot, to students' homes, we have committed ourselves and our resources to making that happen, knowing that there will be a more coordinated effort as things begin to scale.
All right. Last question.
If you could clarify where the money is coming from, I heard several sources. Is it coming from the?
I think I can answer that well. There are actually two different sources. One, CARES Act funding from that the General Assembly has purposed for this, from the large amount that came through the governor's office and the General Assembly is appropriating. The other amount is through the $15 million grant that the Department of Education receives the Rethink Learning grant. And as I mentioned, that grant will support the purchase of the equipment that the students need in their home. The other parts of that grant are a repository, a learning repository that can be used by Datacasting, the teachers involved with that, but for all teachers in South Carolina, a place where they can now go to receive materials, resources. We've been wanting this for a long, long time, and finally able to purchase that through because it's so needed for the COVID impact through this grant that we've received.
This piece is 1.3 million. Did I hear that correctly?
$1.3 million from the General Assembly and $2.4 million from the grant that we received over a 3-year period.
Okay. Y'all, thank you very much for coming. Doctor, we sure appreciate you being here today.
Yes.
And we'll be announcing more progress at a later date. Thank you very much.